He came home expecting quiet luxury, but one single dad's tense warning would reveal a secret that shocked even a billionaire. Ethan Cole was a man who lived in a world most people could only dream of. As a billionaire entrepreneur, his life was filled with meetings, high-stakes decisions, and constant travel. He had built his fortune from scratch, starting with a small tech startup in his 20s and growing it into a massive empire. People often thought of him as untouchable, always busy, always in control. But despite the wealth, the parties, and the luxuries, there was something he often missed: the simple, quiet moments at home. Most days, he returned to his mansion late at night, tired and distracted, with only the hum of his home's security systems and the occasional housekeeper's footsteps to greet him. On this particular evening, however, Ethan decided to do something unusual. He had finished an important deal earlier than expected, and instead of going to his usual dinner engagement, he chose to head home. The idea of surprising his staff, maybe even catching a glimpse of his favorite private chef preparing dinner, felt exciting. He had grown accustomed to his predictable routines, and breaking them, even in small ways, brought a strange thrill. As his car pulled up to the driveway, the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows over the manicured gardens that surrounded the mansion. The air smelled faintly of freshly cut grass mixed with the delicate scent of roses that lined the walkway. Ethan stepped out of his car, feeling the crunch of gravel beneath his polished shoes. The mansion stood silent, elegant, and imposing, with its tall windows reflecting the last light of the day. Everything seemed exactly as he had left it earlier in the week, when he had rushed off to a business summit in another city. He expected quiet, perhaps, a few staff members moving discreetly about, preparing for the evening. He didn't expect tension, surprise, or anything that might disturb the calm of his routine. Yet as he opened the front door, a strange feeling crawled up his spine, a mix of curiosity and caution. Inside, the house was dimly lit, the lights on the main floor casting soft glows across the polished floors and high ceilings. It smelled faintly of lemon polish and vanilla candles, the kind that made any mansion feel a little warmer, a little more human. Ethan called out, his voice echoing slightly. "Hello? Anyone here?" There was no immediate response. That was normal. His staff often moved quietly, not wanting to disturb him, but still, something felt different. The air felt heavier, charged, almost like it was holding its breath, as he walked further into the house. His footsteps soft, but deliberate. He noticed a figure standing near the living room, tense and watchful. The man was tall, with dark hair that fell slightly into his eyes, dressed simply in a t-shirt and jeans. He looked out of place in the lavish surroundings, like someone had stepped into a world they didn't belong to. But it wasn't just the man's appearance that made Ethan pause. It was the intensity in his eyes, the rigid way he held himself. He wasn't expecting a stranger. More than that, he wasn't expecting someone to command attention in his home without even speaking a word. The man's hand shot up slightly, a silent warning, and his lips moved in a whisper, almost too quiet to hear. "Shut up. Don't say a word." Ethan froze mid-step, confusion and surprise warring on his face. His mind raced. Who was this man? How had he gotten in? Was this some kind of prank or an emergency? The combination of the man's sternness and the unusual situation made Ethan take a step back. He had faced negotiations that could ruin companies, handled crises that seemed impossible, and navigated boardrooms where tempers flared. Yet nothing in his life had prepared him for the sudden, quiet intensity of a stranger in his home. Telling him to be silent, Ethan's instincts were to assert control, to demand answers immediately, but something in the man's eyes stopped him. There was urgency, but also fear, something protective. The man wasn't threatening, but he wasn't joking either. Ethan's curiosity and caution collided. He wanted to speak, to demand to know what was happening. But the unspoken command was stronger than any authority Ethan had ever felt. The man's presence made the mansion feel different, almost smaller, as if the walls themselves were watching. Holding secrets Ethan wasn't meant to uncover just yet. The billionaire moved slowly, careful not to startle the man, scanning the room. There was nothing obviously wrong, no broken glass, no signs of a struggle, Yet the tension in the room was tangible, like electricity in the air before a storm. Ethan realized he had underestimated the quiet moments at home. They could be just as intense as any high-stakes boardroom meeting. The man's warning wasn't just about control. It was about protecting something. Someone in Ethan could feel it instinctively as he stood there. Taking in the scene, Ethan noticed small details that made the situation even stranger. A few toys were scattered near the couch, as if a child had been playing moments before. A faint laugh seemed to echo in his mind, but there was no one around. The man remained tense, vigilant, as if ready to react at a moment's notice. Ethan's mind began connecting dots, forming possibilities, each more unbelievable than the last. Yet, despite the confusion, a part of him, the part that had built his empire through calculated risk and careful observation, recognized the seriousness of the moment. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt powerless in his own home. The rules of his life, the routines he had mastered, didn't apply here. This was unfamiliar territory, and yet there was a strange exhilaration in it. He realized that control wasn't just about power or wealth. Sometimes it was about understanding the people around you, reading situations you didn't fully comprehend, and knowing when to hold back. The man's presence demanded respect, and for the first time that evening, Ethan listened before acting. And so, in the quiet grand mansion, the billionaire paused, his usual confidence tempered by curiosity and caution. He was home, yes, but something or someone was waiting for him to discover a truth he hadn't anticipated. The stage was set, and though he didn't yet know it, the night would reveal more than just the presence of a stranger. It would reveal the heart of a single father, the love for a child, and a situation that would shock him more than any business deal ever could. David Turner's heart was pounding in his chest, and every muscle in his body was tense. He had been living in a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city for years, struggling to make ends meet as a single father. His life was a constant balancing act, working long hours, making sure bills were paid, and above all, keeping his young daughter, Lily, safe and happy. Life had not been easy for him, and he had learned the hard way that one small mistake could spiral into disaster. But tonight, something completely unexpected had happened. Earlier that day, Lily had been exploring every corner of the mansion Ethan had allowed them to stay in temporarily. She was curious, adventurous, and full of energy, the kind of child who could turn even the most ordinary space into a playground. David had tried to keep a close eye on her, but in a moment of distraction, she had disappeared into a part of the house he didn't know very well. Panic set in almost immediately when he realized she had gone into a hidden storage room. The door had closed behind her and she was trapped. David had tried calling her name, banging on the door, and even shaking the handle, but nothing worked. His mind raced as he considered what to do next. David knew he couldn't just leave her there. The room was small, dark, and unfamiliar to him, and the thought of Lily being scared or hurt made his stomach turn. At the same time, he knew he had to be careful. This wasn't his house. It belonged to Ethan Cole, a billionaire with a reputation for being serious, precise, and highly protective of his property. Any sudden noise, any visible panic, could alert Ethan or the staff, and David feared their judgment. He needed a solution that would get Lily out safely without creating chaos. As he crouched near the door, thinking, he remembered the small toolkit he had brought with him in case of emergencies. It was nothing fancy, just basic screwdrivers and pliers, but it could be useful. David's hands trembled slightly as he worked to carefully manipulate the lock without causing damage. He spoke softly through the door to Lily, trying to keep her calm. "Sweetheart, it's okay. Daddy's here. Just stay calm, and I'll get you out." Her tiny voice, muffled through the door, called back, "Daddy, I'm scared." That single word made his heart ache. He had promised himself he would never let her feel helpless. And now he had to act quickly. Time felt like it stretched endlessly. Every creak of the mansion, every distant sound, made David jump. He had to be alert, not just for Lily, but for anyone who might appear unexpectedly. Then he heard the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. Someone had returned. His mind immediately raced through the possibilities. each one more dangerous than the last. If it was Ethan, what would happen? Would he get angry? Would he think David had been careless? The thought of disappointing or angering the billionaire made him even more anxious, but he couldn't afford to lose focus. Lily's safety came first. When Ethan appeared in the living room, David knew he had to act quickly. He put his hand up instinctively, a silent command, and whispered, "Shut up. Don't say a word." Ethan froze, his eyes wide, trying to understand the sudden tension. David's gaze was sharp, protective, and urgent. He knew that if Ethan spoke or moved too suddenly, it could scare Lily or complicate the situation further. The single father's body language said more than words could. This was serious, and he needed complete control of the moment. Despite his fear, David kept working on the lock. His mind was focused entirely on the mechanics of it, on every small movement, and on keeping Lily calm. He spoke to her in a soothing tone. "Almost there, sweetie. Just a little longer." Every second felt like a minute. He could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears, loud enough that he thought Lily might hear it too. But he kept his composure. He had learned over the years that panic never solved anything. Calm, thinking, patience, and careful action were the only ways forward. Ethan, standing a few feet away, was trying to process the scene before him. He had seen tense negotiations, high-pressure business crises, and moments of life-or-death decisions in his career, but nothing like this. Here was a man, a stranger in his house, acting with a strange mixture of fear, determination, and care. The way David moved, the intensity in his eyes, and the silent communication told Ethan that this was no ordinary situation. Something deeply personal and urgent was happening. Ethan's curiosity and concern began to grow, but he stayed quiet. Sensing that any sudden movement or word could disrupt the delicate balance, David's hands worked quickly but carefully, his mind mapping every step. He remembered the times he had fixed things for Lily before doors. Toys, even small locks, and realized that all those small moments of problem-solving were coming together now. The challenge wasn't just the lock. It was managing the fear, the environment, and the presence of an unexpected adult who could make or break the situation. He whispered again to Lily, "I'm right here, Lily. You're safe. I've got you." Her small voice responded, filled with a mixture of fear and trust. "Okay, Daddy." The minutes dragged on, but finally David felt the lock give way. He applied a little more pressure, carefully manipulating the mechanism, and the door creaked open. Lily's small, frightened face appeared first, followed by a huge grin as she realized she was free. David scooped her up in his arms, hugging her tightly, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. All the tension, fear, and anxiety melted away for a moment as he held his daughter close. "See, I told you we'd be okay," he whispered, trying to keep his own voice steady even as tears of relief threatened to spill. Ethan watched the scene quietly, completely absorbed. He had expected perhaps a small mishap, a minor issue to be dealt with. But what he saw instead was a father's fierce devotion and ingenuity. David had acted with precision, courage, and love, managing a situation that could have ended in disaster. Ethan was impressed and deeply moved. He realized that wealth and power might solve many problems, but the kind of determination and care David had shown could never be bought. David finally set Lily down, making sure she was calm and safe. He turned to Ethan, who was still standing silently, and nodded. "It's fine now. She's okay. Everything's under control." There was no anger, no confrontation, just a quiet shared understanding of what had just happened. David's actions had turned a potentially dangerous situation into a moment of triumph. And Ethan, observing, felt a mixture of surprise, admiration, and respect. For David, the experience reinforced everything he had always believed, that love, courage, and quick thinking could overcome fear and uncertainty. He had protected his daughter, solved the problem, and maintained control even in the face of the unexpected. And for Ethan, it was a lesson in humility and observation. A reminder that the greatest strengths are sometimes hidden in the quiet, ordinary moments of life, in the actions of those who care deeply and act fearlessly when it matters most. David took a deep breath, still holding Lily close, feeling the steady rise and fall of her small chest against him. The relief was overwhelming, but there was no time to relax completely. His mind was racing with everything that had just happened. How had a simple moment of curiosity from Lily turned into such a tense, high-stakes situation? He looked around the room, scanning for any sign that could explain why the mansion felt more complicated than it should have. And then he realized that he needed to explain not just to Ethan but to himself. He had acted the way he did. Lily, sensing the end of her small ordeal, began to fidget and shift in his arms. Her voice, small and quivering at first, broke the silence. "Daddy, I was scared," she whispered. David smiled gently, brushing her hair from her face. "I know, sweetheart." "I know," he said softly. "But you're safe now. Daddy's here, and I won't let anything happen to you." There was honesty and reassurance in his voice, a combination that had comforted her countless times before. It was the same honesty that would guide his next steps, as he knew that he couldn't leave Ethan wondering what had caused the tension in the first place. Turning to Ethan, David finally spoke, keeping his voice low but steady. "Earlier today, Lily got into a room she shouldn't have. She accidentally locked herself inside, and I was trying to get her out without making a scene. I didn't know when you would return, and I didn't want her to be scared or you to be alarmed." Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to realization. The tension in the room began to dissipate slightly, replaced by curiosity. Ethan had encountered many emergencies in his life: fires, accidents, business crises, but this was different. This was personal, emotional, and deeply human. David continued, explaining the process he had used to free Lily. "I had to be careful. That door's tricky. If I had forced it, it could have broken or made a lot of noise. I didn't want to damage your property, and I didn't want to scare her more than she already was. So I had to work slowly, quietly, and carefully. That's why I told you not to say a word. I needed control of the situation to keep her safe." Ethan listened intently, realizing for the first time the thoughtfulness behind David's actions. This was no reckless parent. This was a man who had measured every movement, every decision, with precision and care, balancing fear, love, and respect. Lily, now more relaxed, hugged her father tightly, clearly proud of how her dad had protected her. David held her close, feeling a wave of warmth and pride. He knew he had acted well under pressure, but part of him still worried about Ethan's reaction. Would he be angry about the disruption? Would he see David's actions as intrusive or inappropriate? Ethan, however, remained silent, watching quietly, as if trying to understand the depth of the situation. The silence itself spoke volumes. David felt that Ethan's patience and attentiveness were not judgmental but curious. It's almost reflective. The single father took a moment to step back, letting Lily stand on her own. She clung to him lightly, her small hand in his, but the tension in her posture had vanished. David gestured toward the room where she had been trapped. "It's nothing dangerous now. I made sure everything is fine. She's okay, and the room's undamaged. I just didn't want anyone panicking, especially her." Ethan nodded slowly, finally beginning to comprehend the scenario. The initial shock of seeing David standing tense and commanding. Silence had masked the incredible care and quick thinking that had just taken place. David could feel his heart rate slowing as he recounted the events. The adrenaline that had fueled his focus was fading, replaced by reflection. He realized that the fear of being misunderstood had almost overshadowed the relief of having his daughter safe. Every choice he had made, the way he whispered, the careful handling of the lock, even his command to Ethan to remain quiet, had been guided by one principle: Lily's safety above all else. That single motivation explained everything. Ethan, now fully attentive, finally spoke. "You risked a lot to protect her," he said quietly. "Not just from the door, but from everything that could have happened if things went wrong." That was impressive. David's shoulders relaxed slightly, hearing acknowledgement from the billionaire. He had been unsure if Ethan would understand, but now it seemed that the tension in the room had transformed into mutual respect. It was not every day that a man who controlled vast fortunes recognized the courage and love of a parent in such a personal moment. David smiled faintly. shrugging as if it were no big deal. "I didn't think about impressing anyone," he said. "I just did what needed to be done. My daughter needed me. That's all that mattered." Ethan could see the honesty in David's eyes, the unwavering devotion to his child. It was a kind of strength that couldn't be measured by wealth, power, or influence. It was raw, human, and incredibly compelling. For Ethan, the moment shifted something deep inside him. He had always admired clever problem-solving, quick thinking, and bravery in his business ventures. But here it was displayed in the most personal, touching way imaginable. A father protecting his child, improvising solutions under pressure, and maintaining calm in the chaos. This was strength that didn't rely on money or influence. It was the kind of instinctive intelligence and love that could not be taught. David, noticing Ethan's reflective gaze, realized that the tension in the room had fully lifted. Lily, now curious and adventurous again, peeked into the storage room, exploring it carefully under her father's watchful eye. The earlier fear was gone, replaced with excitement at the adventure she had survived. David knelt beside her, guiding her gently. "See, nothing to be afraid of now. You're safe, and Daddy's here. You can play, but remember not to wander into rooms alone." Lily nodded enthusiastically, her eyes shining with trust and admiration for her father. As the room settled, David began to relax fully. The explanation he had given Ethan seemed to satisfy the billionaire, and he felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced since the panic had started. He realized how delicate the balance of trust, patience, and careful action had been in the last hour. The entire situation could have escalated, but his focus on Lily's safety, combined with quick thinking and careful judgment, had turned a potential disaster into a triumph. Ethan, observing quietly, started to feel a mix of admiration and curiosity. He was used to people who relied on money or authority to solve problems. But David had solved this problem with something far rarer: instinct, courage, and love. It was a powerful combination, and it left Ethan thinking differently about what true capability looked like. In that moment, he realized that the single father had taught him an unspoken lesson about priorities, courage, and the quiet strength of a parent protecting their child. David looked at Ethan, feeling the shift in understanding. "That's why I asked you to stay quiet," he said gently. "I needed to focus. I couldn't risk her getting more scared or the situation getting worse. That's all it was. No drama, no confrontation, just making sure my daughter was safe." Ethan nodded, finally grasping the full picture. The surprise and tension he had felt earlier were now replaced with appreciation, a sense of humility, and a newfound respect for the man standing before him as the night settled over the mansion. David and Lily remained together, safe and calm. While Ethan reflected on what he had witnessed, the events of the evening had shown him something he rarely saw in the world of wealth and power: genuine human courage, love, and problem-solving under pressure. The single father had acted with precision, patience, and an unwavering focus on what mattered most. Ethan understood, perhaps for the first time fully, that sometimes the most impressive achievements weren't in boardrooms or business deals, but in the quiet, determined actions of someone protecting what they loved the most. Ethan watched quietly, still processing everything he had just witnessed. He had seen many things in his life: boardroom confrontations, high-stakes negotiations, emergencies that tested the limits of human patience and skill, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Here was a man, a single father, standing in his mansion with a calm intensity that demanded respect. The way David had managed the situation, protecting his daughter while staying aware of his surroundings, was nothing short of remarkable. Ethan realized that this was not just a simple case of a child accidentally locking herself in a room. It was a display of ingenuity, courage, and love in its purest form. David, still holding Lily's small hand, began to move carefully toward the storage room where the ordeal had occurred. The door, slightly ajar now, revealed a small space filled with shelves and boxes, some of which had been moved aside during Lily's accidental adventure. The room looked harmless now, but Ethan could imagine how intimidating it must have felt for a young child trapped inside. Lily's wide eyes reflected both the lingering fear of the experience and the relief that she was finally free. Ethan took a step closer, but David raised a hand gently, signaling him to wait. The silent command carried authority. It was clear that David's focus was still on ensuring Lily's comfort and safety before anything else. As David crouched near the door, he spoke to Lily in a soft, reassuring voice. "It's okay, baby. You're safe now. Daddy's right here, and nothing can hurt you." Lily's small nod, her fingers tightening around his hand, showed complete trust. David's attention to detail was extraordinary. He had not only freed her from the physical confinement of the room, but also addressed her emotional state, calming her fear with words and presence. Ethan observed, realizing that this combination of practical problem-solving and emotional intelligence was something he had rarely seen. Even among the most capable professionals in his business world, David then carefully guided Lily into the room to retrieve a small toy she had left behind. He knew she would want it, and he also knew that rushing or panicking could trigger another wave of fear. Every movement was deliberate, measured, and controlled. Ethan noticed the precision with which David handled each action, moving boxes slightly, checking the lock mechanism, and keeping Lily engaged with gentle conversation. It was a dance of careful planning and instinctive reaction, a balance that only someone with both experience and deep love could achieve. Then came the moment that truly shocked Ethan, as David gently opened the final section of the door. The lock mechanism clicked into place, revealing that the door had not been broken, tampered with, or forced. The ingenuity lay in the fact that David had used only a small set of tools and his own understanding of mechanical systems to unlock the door without causing damage. The billionaire had expected chaos or destruction, but instead, he saw skill, patience, and intelligence at work. It was a level of calm mastery that stunned him. Lily stepped out, her tiny face lighting up as she realized she was finally free. She ran into her father's arms, hugging him tightly. "Daddy, you saved me?" she exclaimed, her voice filled with relief and admiration. David smiled, brushing her hair gently. "I told you I would, didn't I? Nothing to be afraid of now." Ethan could see the immense bond between them, a bond that was strengthened by shared fear and the relief of survival. The way David had handled everything from problem-solving to emotional reassurance was something Ethan had rarely seen in his life. Ethan's mind raced as he tried to process the situation. He had often thought that wealth, power, and status defined a person's capability. But here was a man who had solved a potentially dangerous problem with nothing but love, intelligence, and presence of mind. There were no assistants, no security systems, no external resources, just a father's quick thinking under pressure. Ethan felt a mix of awe and humility. This was a kind of skill that money could never buy. It was instinct, courage, and heart, combined in the most extraordinary way. David, noticing Ethan's quiet observation, finally spoke. "I did what I had to do. She's my daughter, and I couldn't let her be scared or hurt. That's all there is to it." There was no boastfulness in his tone, only honesty and simplicity. Ethan nodded slowly, realizing that this was precisely why he had been so impressed. David's actions were not about proving himself to anyone. They were about protecting someone he loved. And that selflessness, coupled with skill and intelligence, made the moment unforgettable. Lily, now curious, began to explore the room under her father's watchful eye. She picked up her toy, placed it back carefully, and peeked around the shelves. The fear that had gripped her moments ago was replaced by fascination and wonder. David guided her gently, showing her that the world could be safe. When approached with care and patience, Ethan observed this interaction, noting the balance between freedom and guidance that David provided. It was clear that this was not just a lesson for Lily. It was a reflection of David's understanding of responsibility and love. The billionaire stepped closer, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. "How did you manage it so calmly?" he asked quietly. David looked up, a small smile on his face. "I had to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't have helped either of us. I focused on what I could control: the lock, her comfort, and keeping the situation safe. The rest, well, the rest was just about staying patient. Ethan could see the wisdom in David's words. It wasn't just about solving a problem. It was about understanding what truly mattered in the moment and acting with precision and care. Ethan began to reflect on his own life, realizing that in his world of business and wealth, he often overlooked these small but critical moments. The ability to stay calm, act decisively, and protect someone's well-being was far more valuable than any deal or investment he had ever made. Watching David, he understood that true intelligence and strength often manifested in acts of love and courage that went unnoticed by the world, had profound effects on those involved. David, sensing that Ethan was beginning to appreciate the situation fully, relaxed slightly. He knew that he had earned the billionaire's respect, not through wealth or status, but through actions, instincts, and the unwavering love of a parent. Lily, sensing the lighter mood, laughed softly, a sound that was like music in the room after the tension of the past hour. David smiled, holding her hand gently. "See, everything's okay now? You're safe, and Daddy's here. That's what matters." Ethan, finally speaking, admitted his admiration. "I've seen many smart people in my life, but what you just did, it's remarkable. You didn't need money, influence, or power. You just used your mind, your heart, and your courage. That's something else entirely." David's face showed a mixture of modesty and pride. He didn't act for recognition, but hearing these words from Ethan made him realize that his actions had been seen and understood. As the night continued, the mansion felt different. The tension of the earlier moments had transformed into a sense of awe and respect. Ethan realized that this encounter had given him a rare glimpse into the kind of strength that exists outside of wealth and power, strength born of love, necessity, and unwavering dedication. David had shown that even in the most ordinary settings, extraordinary courage could manifest, and it was far more impactful than any financial achievement. David guided Lily back to a comfortable corner of the living room, letting her relax while he maintained a watchful eye. The father and daughter shared a quiet moment of relief, a small celebration of safety and trust. Ethan, standing nearby, couldn't help but feel humbled. He understood now that he had witnessed something truly extraordinary, a demonstration of human capability, love, and ingenuity that would stay with him for a long time. For David, the night was a reaffirmation of everything he valued: patience, courage, and above all, the protection of his child. And for Ethan, it was a lesson in humility, perspective, and admiration. What had begun as a surprising return home had transformed into a profound experience, one that highlighted the unspoken, often invisible acts of bravery that defined true strength. Both men, in their own ways, had learned from the situation, and the connection forged that evening would not soon be forgotten. The house had finally settled into a calm, quiet. The tension that had gripped the mansion earlier that evening had lifted, leaving behind a sense of relief, understanding, and a new kind of respect. David Turner sat in the living room, still holding Lily's small hand, while Ethan Cole observed them quietly. The billionaire, who had walked into the house expecting nothing more than a routine evening, realized that what he had witnessed was far more meaningful than any business success he had ever achieved. It was a demonstration of human courage, love, and problem-solving under pressure, something that money and influence could never replicate. David looked down at Lily, smiling softly as she began to play with her small toy, her fear now completely replaced by curiosity and excitement. He thought about the moments that had led to this point: the panic, the careful handling of the lock, the whispers to keep her calm, and the tense interactions when he realized Ethan had returned unexpectedly. Each decision he had made in the past hour had been guided by one principle: protect his daughter at all costs. That guiding principle had carried him through the fear, the adrenaline, and the uncertainty. Ethan, watching the scene unfold, found himself reflecting deeply. In his life, he had often relied on power, influence, and wealth to solve problems. He had negotiated billions in deals, managed entire corporations, and faced crises that could topple empires. Yet, in all his experiences, he had rarely seen the kind of intelligence and bravery he had just witnessed. David had solved a problem without any of the advantages Ethan typically used without assistance. Security systems, or backup plans. All he had was focus, courage, and love. Ethan realized that these qualities were often undervalued in his world, but they were more powerful than any boardroom strategy or financial maneuver. David finally spoke, breaking the quiet. "It's over now," he said, his voice calm and steady. "She's safe. That's all that matters." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the simplicity in those words. So much of life, Ethan thought, was complicated by ambition, ego, and the endless pursuit of more. But here was a man whose priorities were clear, whose strength came from love and responsibility rather than titles and wealth. The clarity of purpose, the unwavering focus on protecting someone he loved, was something Ethan found both humbling and inspiring. As the evening continued, Ethan approached David carefully. He didn't want to disrupt the moment, but felt compelled to acknowledge what had just occurred. "You did everything perfectly," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "I've seen a lot in my life, but nothing quite like this. You didn't just solve a problem, you protected someone you care about. That's rare." David gave a modest smile, shrugging slightly. "I did what any parent would do. I just tried to stay calm and think clearly. That's all." Ethan could see the honesty in his eyes, the lack of pretense, and he realized that the humility and dedication of this man made the act even more impressive. David then glanced at Ethan and added, almost hesitantly, "I was worried about what would happen if you came home early. I didn't want to alarm you, or her, or make things messy. That's why I asked you to stay quiet." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding fully for the first time the level of thought and care behind David's warning. It wasn't arrogance or fear, it was strategy, guided by concern for a child's safety and emotional well-being. Ethan admired that deeply. He realized that the true measure of a person's intelligence and character wasn't how they performed under ideal circumstances, but how they acted in moments of uncertainty, fear, and responsibility. Lily, sensing that the adults were calm, began to explore the living room more freely. She picked up a book, then a small stuffed toy, laughing softly as she moved around. David watched her carefully but relaxed, allowing her to regain a sense of normalcy after the frightening ordeal. It struck Ethan how small moments like these could reveal the strength of a person's character. The way David balanced protection with freedom, caution with encouragement, and calm with decisive action, all reflected a kind of intelligence and emotional depth that Ethan rarely encountered in his high-powered world. Ethan finally spoke again, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "I've always thought power and money defined what someone could do. But tonight, I've learned something different. Strength can be quiet. Courage can be invisible until it matters most. And love, well, love can drive people to do things that no amount of money could ever accomplish." David listened, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. He wasn't used to such acknowledgement, especially from someone like Ethan, whose life had been shaped by wealth and influence. The praise felt genuine, not superficial, and it reinforced the idea that the right actions, guided by care and intelligence, could command respect regardless of status. As the night deepened, Ethan began to feel a sense of connection he rarely experienced. Here was a man who had faced fear, uncertainty, and responsibility with grace and intelligence. Here was a child whose trust and admiration had shaped the decisions of a parent. And here was a billionaire, observing quietly, learning lessons about courage, love, and human capability that no amount of experience in the corporate world could teach. The unexpected event had turned into a profound life lesson for everyone involved. David, sensing that the moment was drawing to a close, gathered Lily into his arms once more. "We should get ready for bed soon," he said gently. "But remember, you were brave tonight. I'm proud of you." Lily's eyes shone with excitement and pride. "Thanks, Daddy. I'm brave," she exclaimed. Ethan smiled, watching the exchange, struck by how ordinary moments of life could carry extraordinary meaning. The bravery of a small child, guided and supported by a parent's love, had created a ripple effect of admiration, respect, and reflection for everyone present. Ethan, reflecting quietly, began to consider the impact of the night on his own life. For all his wealth and experience, he realized he had sometimes overlooked the power of simple human courage and care. He had faced crises, yes, but few had been as intimate, personal, or emotionally charged as this one. Watching David act with focus, patience, and unwavering love, Ethan understood that the most important achievements in life were not always measured in money or accolades. They were measured in the protection, guidance, and nurturing of those we care about. David, noticing Ethan's thoughtful expression, offered a small nod. "I hope you understand now why I reacted the way I did," he said softly. "I had to be careful. I had to make sure everything was safe before anything else happened. It wasn't about being secretive. It was about being responsible." Ethan nodded, fully appreciating the wisdom and honesty in David's words. He realized that responsibility, love, calm problem-solving could achieve far more than any directive or command issued in haste. As the evening wound down, the three of them, Ethan, David, and Lily, shared a quiet moment of reflection. The mansion, once imposing and silent, now felt warm, alive, and filled with the unspoken understanding of courage, care, and human connection. Ethan realized that he had gained not only insight into David's character, but also a broader perspective on what truly matters in life. Strength, courage, and love were more valuable than any fortune, and witnessing them in action had left an indelible mark on him. David finally sat back, allowing Lily to settle into a comfortable chair with her toy. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a deep sense of calm and accomplishment. He had acted decisively, kept his daughter safe, and maintained his composure in the face of unexpected circumstances. The respect he had earned from Ethan was a bonus, but not the motivation. What mattered most was Lily's safety and well-being, and in that, he had succeeded completely. Ethan, feeling a sense of humility and admiration, approached David once more. "You've shown me something tonight I will never forget," he said sincerely. "Not just how to act in a crisis, but how to care, how to protect, and how to be brave in ways I've rarely witnessed. I have a lot to learn from you." David smiled softly, nodding, understanding that this acknowledgement was genuine and meaningful. It was rare for someone like Ethan to recognize courage and intelligence outside of his usual world of wealth and power, and that recognition carried weight. As the night grew late, the house quieted completely. The previous tension, fear, and adrenaline had transformed into calm, reflection, and a sense of connection. David knew that despite the fear and urgency earlier, the situation had strengthened his bond with Lily and earned respect from someone he never expected. Ethan realized that life's most valuable lessons often come from unexpected places, in ordinary acts of love and courage that reveal the true measure of human strength. In the end, the evening became more than just a story of a child trapped in a room. It became a story of courage, ingenuity, and devotion. David had proven that love and quick thinking could overcome fear and uncertainty. Lily had learned that even in frightening moments, trust and bravery could prevail. And Ethan had discovered that wealth and power were not the ultimate measures of compassion. Intelligence and courage were far more extraordinary. The events of that night left an unforgettable impression on everyone involved, shaping their understanding of what truly matters in life.